Hello there. Welcome back. Today's lesson is going to be on pages 15, 16, and 17. So if you will turn to page 15 in your notebook, please, your textbook, we will get started with our study of the colonies in a little more depth. So page 15 has a couple of graphics on here and also a passage at the bottom. I want to remind you that these items were purchased from a, a blog called Student Savvy, and these may not be duplicated in any way. I purchased these, I purchased the license to use them in my classroom, but I cannot duplicate them or sell them, reproduce them in any way. So you do not have permission to do that. Okay, we're starting with the key, and there's the source if you're interested or if you have teacher friends who are interested. But the key that we're going to use will tell us about the different colonies. I'm just going to use the one that we used on the last page. So we have the New England colonies. And that's the map that you see on this page. And then the other two, we have the middle colonies, which are sometimes called the Middle Atlantic colonies, and then the southern colonies. Do you remember how many there are in total of the original colonies? You need to know that fact. There are 13. Okay, the the New England colonies, we are using the blue highlighter. If you have something else that you're using to color, that's fine. But I'm just using my highlighters because that's the easiest thing at hand. We used the pink highlighter let me just use the standard one so it'll match, for the middle or the Atlantic colonies. And then if you recall, we used orange for the south. So I'll pick up that one. So this is a key. A key is very often on a map that will tell you what the colors or the symbols represent. So if you have a key on the page, you want to start there. Look at that carefully and make sure you understand exactly what that key is talking about. So let's zoom in on our map of the New England colonies. I know you've seen this before, but I want to just keep reviewing it. It's very important to help us remember. So I'm going to start by coloring in this state. This is Maine. Remember, Maine was not one of the original colonies. This is today the state of Maine. My grammar is horrible today, guys. I don't know where I'm coming up with these weird sentences, but I'm sorry. Just bear with me and we'll get it straightened out. So at the time of the colony's settlement, the colonial settlement, this was part of the Massachusetts colony. So we're going to go ahead and label it, but we need to make that distinction. And here is proper Massachusetts today. So let's go ahead and color that. So in colonial times, this was referred to as the Massachusetts land. You had two separate areas, but it was all considered the Massachusetts area. And the way this worked, when the king agreed to start colonies, he would give a governor a charter, a legal document that said you have permission to start this colony. So the Massachusetts colonies were chartered for specific purposes. You had to tell the king what you intended to do in these areas. But let's go ahead and label them. Today this is Maine, and that's what I'm going to call it because I don't want to confuse you. But Maine was not one of the originals. This was part of Massachusetts, or the Massachusetts colony. And this is the actual state of Massachusetts. Massachusetts. Okay, let's move back to the coloring palette here and get this one. Do you remember what this one's called? The one beside it is not one of the colonies, but they showed it to us anyway. I think they're just trying to keep us from getting confused. So do you remember what this one is called? Right here, separating Massachusetts and Maine. I'll give you a hint. It's New something. Not New York. New Hampshire. In Britain, the land is divided into shires. This is where the term sheriff comes from sheriff. So shire, S-H-I-R-E, is definitely a British term. So this is New Hampshire. It is named for an area, and I left a little bit of it off. It's named for an area back in Britain, I'm assuming. So here is the rest of it that I didn't color. That was part of Maine. Okay, let's move on south. We'll come back to that white area in just a minute. Let's get this one. And I'm going to go ahead and get this one too while we're in this area and I'm coloring. Two more of the New England colonies. The one on the left starts with C, and the one on the right is two words. So let's get the one on the left first. This is the one that I have trouble spelling. Spell the word connect, and then add I cut. Connect, I cut. Connecticut. If you're a basketball fan, you have heard of Connecticut. UConn is one of the best, especially in women's basketball. And then the one right beside it is Rhode. Remember, this is not like a road you drive on. Rhode Island. And those, my friends, are the New England colonies. Let's go ahead and label the state of Vermont, but we're not going to color it because it was not an original colony. Only the blue areas were the originals. So let's read an overview of the New England colonies. New England colonies overview. Many of the colonists in New England came to the Americas for religious freedom. Separatists in England, also known as Pilgrims, were often persecuted for their beliefs. They were separate from the Anglican Church. The Puritans also experienced the same treatment. The terrain and weather in New England made farming difficult for the colonists. The region had many thick forests and rugged mountains. Many colonists made a living from fishing and selling cod. So a couple of things here I just want to point out. The word Anglican. Let me try that again with a highlighter that's a little bit thicker. Anglican refers to the Church of England. And it was sort of a system where the king at the time determined the religion for the whole country. So if the king decided that he was Protestant, then the Anglican Church was Protestant. So these folks left England and came eventually to the New England colonies for freedom of religion. Another word is terrain. That refers to the geography, the land, the lay of the land. In this part of Tennessee, we have mountains, so our terrain is mountainous. And then one more is the word cod. That is a type of fish. So I think those are mostly the words that we haven't seen before. I'm trying to just hit those if I get to them. If you have questions about any of the other words, let me remind you how you can look them up if you have the internet, or you can call me and I will help you with them. For example, the word Anglican. If you search for Anglican, it gives you a very long definition. Concepts developed by the Church of England. That's the definition that I think of. but you can look up your own words, or again, you can call me if you need help with them. Okay, let's look on over at page 16. Just turn one page over. We don't have a key on this page because it's on the first page. And this is the middle colonies, so I'm going to pick up my color for the middle colonies, and that is pink. There are 4 of these. The first one is a state I'm sure you've heard of. It also starts with new. On that first map that we did, however, I cut off Long Island. This one shows you Long Island, so we'll add that in as part of New York. And I gave it away. I was going to ask you, what is the name of this state? So now I've told you. Hopefully you knew anyway. And this is also part. So this is New York. There was a shire in England called York, and this is New York. And then we have the state down here. This one starts with P. Its founder was William Penn. Do you know the name of this colony that became a state? If you said Pennsylvania, you are correct. So Pennsylvania is this area right in here. It is still a state to this day. One of my dearest friends is from Pennsylvania. So Penn, that was William Penn. Sylvania. Pennsylvania. And this time let's travel south of Pennsylvania to pick up this little fella. This one almost looks like the letter D to me, capital D, for Delaware. And as my mom would have helped me with these, the riddle was, what did Delaware? And you may remember just to the north of that is a New Jersey. So here is New Jersey sitting right up here at the top. So New Jersey is east of Pennsylvania. It's north of Delaware. New Jersey. And again, I want you to know that the Atlantic Ocean is over here. You see these states in news coverage of hurricanes sometimes. When those hurricanes come in off the Atlantic, sometimes they go this far north, but not often. So what about these colonies? We know that the New England colonies were religious freedom, they were fishermen, and they lived in rugged forests. The middle colonies overview, similar to the New England colonies, many colonists came to the Americas for religious freedom and economic opportunities. Unlike New England, however, the middle colonies presented many different religions and cultures. There were Quakers, Lutherans, Dutch Calvinists, Mennonites, and other groups. Farming was easy in the middle colonies because of their fertile soil. Their growing season lasted much longer than the New England colonies. So that is life in the middle colonies. And let's turn to page 17. We'll get the southern colonies. These are orange. So this top one here, let's color them one at a time so you can see the shape of the states. This one is where a lot of our government activities occur for the United States. This is the state. It was the original colony, but now a state of Maryland. So Maryland. Maryland. This big state, One of the most beautiful states, I think, in the whole Union. The countryside is beautiful. They have a beach over here because they're on the Atlantic, and then you have mountains. One of my favorite states, this one starts with the letter V, Virginia. And then these next two belong together. They're north and south. Do you know the other word that goes with them? This is north what? One of our neighbors. You can see Tennessee over here to the west. I won't label it because it wasn't part of the original colony, but Tennessee is right here. So that colony that we're looking at right there is North Carolina. So you have the word North Carolina. Carolina. And if that's North Carolina, I bet you know this one. One of my favorite states. I love to go to Charleston, which is right where I'm coloring on the Atlantic. South Carolina. And those were referred to as the Carolina colony. It was sort of grouped together in the beginning. And then one more. The name associated with this one is James Oglethorpe. This colony was not founded for religious freedom. As you move south, the reasons for founding changed a little bit. This one was more related to money. This one is Georgia, named for King George. So those are your southern colonies. Again, the Atlantic Ocean is here, just to give you some perspective. And the overview of the southern colonies says, cash crops such as cotton and tobacco played a big role in the southern colonies. Slaves and indentured servants were used as a workforce on plantations. The southern colonists experienced outbreaks of malaria and yellow fever. The geography was also very different from the New England and Middle colonies. They, meaning the southern colonies, had lots of water sources with bays, rivers, and wetlands. A couple of words here that I want you to know. First of all, indentured servants. These folks paid for passage to the New World. In other words, they agreed to come to the colonies in exchange for 7 years' work. So if I were living in England and I wanted to come over to live, say, in Georgia, I would agree that if you will pay my passage over, I will work for you for 7 years as an indentured servant. That's different than slaves. Slaves were forced to work. They were not paid, they were forced to work, and they did not have the opportunity for freedom. Indentured servants worked for a set time and then they were released to be free. Plantations are those large farms where tobacco and cotton were grown. Very enormous amounts of land were used to grow these cash crops. There was a lot of money in cotton and tobacco, and also in ink. Some plantations grew ink, or even some grew other crops that they could sell for money back in England or back in Europe. One other thing I wanted to point out, and I've lost it. Malaria and yellow fever are both they're both diseases that killed a lot of people. And I completely lost that other thought. I guess it wasn't that important. So these are overviews of the colonies by region, just to give you a little more information on those. And in our next video, we will be talking about the government that these folks eventually set up and learning about how that government still works today. So I'll see you soon. I hope you have a great day.